A very good morning to everyone. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Shanteri Malya, and I'm editor in Economic Times. And we are kind of very kicked about, sort of having this roundtable. So it's my privilege to extend a warm welcome to everyone. So since the market has opened up and we're all back to doing physical events, it's good to see people face to face. I'm sure you're all kind of dealing with a hybrid work model right now. Some days of the week at home and some days of the week at the workplace. So it's interesting times for us now as we've sailed past COVID. So the theme for today's roundtable, which we are very happy to be kind of looking at, is something that I'm sure as people who are in the people's engagement positions in your organizations are very much in the heart of, in the thick of. So the blueprint of a healthy and thriving worker and workplace. I'm not going to say anything new, but of course, I would be setting a context for you to come out and give your views and, sort of feel free, because this is a good forum for you to kind of come out with your views. So the paradigm, as they say, of the workplace, the modern workplace, has changed because of a number of reasons. Even if you look back, step back and go prior to COVID, a lot of the dynamics of the workplace changed. For one, there was a shift in the way organizations were looking at levels of engagement with the employee. So the relationship between the traditional relationship between the employer and the employee dramatically changed. I mean, for good or forever, as they say. And right from the way the employee was boarded to the time that an employee was leaving, to the way he was being retained was being rethought of. And then came in this whole shift in the different generations of workforce. So you saw an older workforce which was more tuned to one way of working in organizations for a number of years, was soon shifting out, and you had a different generation coming in. So now we are in a cross-generational mode in organizations. So you will have people spanning from say 21 to 50 plus in the same, jostling together within the same organization. And then came in digital. So the advent of tech also changed the game for organizations which were not originally tech companies. So the advent of digital kind of infiltrated, as I was using this word just a while ago, infiltrated the way we have looked at all the functions of an organization. So given these parameters and what employees are actually thinking, which is the other aspect, how are they relating to their workplace? What is the idea of how do they relate to their employer organization? What are the different parameters to what we define as wellness? Is a very broad space now. Today we are funneling the discussion to one or two aspects. We do notice that modern workplace and modern life have brought with it a whole shift in the way an employee envisages himself in terms of the skills he has, and also in terms of his growth as well as the stress he faces. So wellness extends to also all these dimensions at one place, because none of it is mutually exclusive in the way an employee envisages himself. So what are the ways in which we can look at a holistic wellness strategy for an employee? What are the things that encompass a wellness strategy? What are organizations doing? Are we on the right road? What are the challenges we are facing on that road? Have we hit one sort of a place where it's a roadblock or it's a solution, a way forward? These are the dimensions that we're going to try and put together. There may be old facts, time-tested, revelations that may come in, or we may have new things coming in today's discussion. So to give us a sort of a direction to this, I would be inviting all of you with a quick round of self-introduction, 2 lines of self-introduction, and let's make it a little interesting if you could just give one fun fact about yourself that none of us know, because we're all just meeting each other. So after the round of introductions, we'll quickly move on to the discussion. So let's start off from here with Smita.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Really wonderful to meet you all. I'm Smita Subhash. I head HR in Uber for their technology teams in Uber for the last 9 months. A fun fact about myself, I'm a huge comic book fan, so I have a huge collection of comic books, and especially Asterix and Obelix. So when you talk about wellness and what you do to unwind at the end of the day, I think that's it for me.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Welcome, Smita.
Hello, good morning all. My name is Ramachandra. I manage compensation benefits for Society General. I've been there with them for the last 5 years. Right? And now I started wondering what is contract recruitment. Hi, boss.
So hi, good morning. I'm Chandrasekhar. So I lead the total rewards function for Adobe India. I would say my real fact. I'm a DJ. I DJ in clubs on the weekends, on Saturday and Sunday. So that's been my part-time profession too.
Excellent, excellent. So we have a DJ here. If you're getting bored, he gets us to groove. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Roman. I look after HR for ABB India. And fun fact, I'm a closeted chef. If only I could get a lot of money, maybe I would have left my job.
Great. Welcome, Raman.
Hi everybody, wonderful to see each one of you over here. And my name is Asha Subramanian, and I head human resources and people function for Subex, and been there since a year now. And before that, I was with GoIVGo heading the HR there. Unwinding stuff for me, because it's very relevant to today's topic, is I'm a biker. And I have a Harley Davidson, and my husband has a BMW. So we ride to places like Rajasthan, Goa, and these kind of places. So that's about it.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Welcome. Yes, please.
Hi everybody, this is Israel Paul from Bangalore, working in a company called Flatware Solutions. I'm the ED and the HR head. With regard to my fun part, I like to try out some different cuisines, prepare myself the weekends, and that's how I enjoy my time with my family. That's the other part of the story of my child.
Wonderful. Yes, so can we move to Neetan, please?
Hi, my name is Neetan. So I work for ACT. I've been with the ACT for last 10 years now. So I head the corporate HR in ACT right now. So the fun part is I like craft. I do a lot of bottle painting. So I ensure weekends I empty the bottle so that I can.
So he finds a solution to his problem.
Yes, thank you.
So hi everyone, my name is Sonali, and I head HR for Fortinet India and SAC. Literally been there for a month now, so very very new. For fun, I think mine's going to sound very boring after everybody else, but I really like working out. So I've started yoga recently, I've been running in the past, and also do a bit of gymming, but it gives me the kick that I need to get through my days. So
Great. Yes, welcome. Sir, a self-introduction, yes.
This is like a suspense novel. I just entered the room. Right?
Okay, so a self-introduction.
You came in.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I was going to say it's like a suspense novel, which I have been asked to start reading from the middle.
Okay, so let me walk you through. So, a self-introduction, to line who you are, and we know it, but it needs to come from you, and a fun fact about yourself.
Sure. My name is Rahul, doctor by training, father of 2 brats. My son is 17, my daughter is 10.
That's a fun fact in itself.
Well, you can ask many. I don't think many will agree. I represent Bosch today. I'm the head of health and wellness. Recently joined them 10 months ago. Was with International SOS for a good 15 years before that. Fun fact, I love Bangalore weather. We were just talking about that also. Let's maybe start with that.
Okay.
Pleasure to meet you all.
Great. Welcome. Welcome, so. And now can we move to Tony, please?
Sure. Thank you, Shantiri, and thanks for this introduction, for giving us this. And so, good morning, everyone. So, I'm with, my name is Tony. I am with Aether Energy. So, something new about me that you wouldn't know is that I've just been in Bangalore for 1.5 months. For being in Bombay for more than 20 years. So, it's a big shift for me, my kids, my family. So every weekend I go out now cycling to explore the roads and figure out, what are the nooks and crannies. So that's what I do right now. Sure. But thank you for setting this, and good to meet you all. It's a new crowd.
Yeah, good. Welcome. So I hope you like Bangalore.
Oh,
And
absolutely,
take
I
to
do.
Bangalore.
Yeah.
The weather, as Rahul said, is the USP still, you know.
Yeah,
So
it's centrally
despite everything
air-conditioned.
else, it is centrally air conditioned. Yes. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, Bhamini.
Hi, I'm Bhamini. I work with Emphasis, heading 3 functions: global compensation benefits, HR, analytics, and HR for a couple of business units. Fun fact about me, I have a lot of fun, trying out different things. This year it is all about reading books. My target is about reading 52 books for this year. So I hope, at least I reach somewhere around that mark.
Wonderful. So traditional book reader. Right? Good bibliophile. Good. Nice. Okay, so everyone's given a nice fun fact about themselves. Only you have passed the question. So you are not fun in that case, Ramchandra sir. I'm sure you got a drift of.
Yeah, I mean nowadays it's like traveling to Mysore has become one of the
The 10 expressway. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's been work in progress for quite a while. Yeah, your work started and it's been on for a while, though they're pushing it.
Another 3-4 months, I think.
Correct. Great. So it's now my privilege to also introduce Mr. Noel Coutinho, who is the co-founder of EkinCare. So Noel will be kind of overseeing, listening to our perspectives here, and jumping in and kind of sort of trying to understand what the community has to say about what the blueprint of a healthy and thriving worker and workplace is. So welcome, Noel.
Thank you.
And you've had an interesting career journey, with EkinCare as well, because the company itself, I think, positioned itself through different journeys in the course of its existence. So what is that one fun fact about you that we should know?
About me or about the organization?
About you primarily, okay. And if the organization, we'll come to that. Definitely.
So yeah, again, a doctor by qualification. I've kind of been shifting what I've been doing since the last 22 years. Studied to be a doctor, got into hospital management, landed up in insurance, then got into reinsurance, and now after close to around 16 or 17 odd years, decided to leave everything and become an entrepreneur. So that's on the professional side of it. On the other side, I mean, I'm a guy who can't sit in one place. As much as you tell me to be outside, and Bangalore weather, again, loved it. So this year, I mean, I've been doing crazy stuff, but this year my goal is to run 2,500 kilometers and cycle 2,500 kilometers in this calendar year. So close to it. Travel and other things permitting, I should be able to hit those numbers. So that's about me. As far as EkinCare is concerned, what's a fun fact?
Maybe we can throw in a couple of fun facts.
Just trying to think. Maybe I'll get back to this on. I mean, so with EkinCare, I mean, one of the questions somebody asked me is, we had close to 300,000 lives on the platform, and we gave up that and decided to focus only on B2B because that was a B2C kind of a thing. And EkinCare also has gone through its transitions from where we started in 2015 as a medical records kind of a organization to a company that wanted to help NRIs manage the health of their family members back in India, to where we are now with 500 corporates managing their benefits for their employees. So I think change is the only constant, as they say. But been a wonderful journey so far, thanks to all the customers that we've been servicing. And today's opportunity, like Shantari mentioned, right, is we always want to keep a listening ear. We want to build a product that's suitable for the market. A lot of credit for where we are today goes back to all the clients that we had. Our first client back in 2016, the 10 clients that we had in 2017, the 180 that we had in 2019 to the 500 that we have now. It's been constant learning, a lot of feedback in terms of how they would like to see our product develop, what are the features that they would like to see, how they believe employees could utilize it better. So today's opportunity for us is just to be listening to how you look at things going forward, and maybe we take learnings from there. in terms of what we could do, to give back to the industry.
Sure. Great. So welcome, Noel.
Thank you.
Yeah, a warm welcome to you, and I hope we have a fruitful discussion going. And so, without further ado, let's get started with some pointers coming in. So I'll possibly throw my first question to Neetan there. I won't go in the same order, so it won't follow a sequential order. So we'll keep jumping in. So we'll go crisscross across the table here. So I'll start with you, Neetan. So A1 is how are you looking at wellness from your organization standpoint? What's the exact landscape of your sort of a wellness strategy right now? And B, I will come to this eventually and take one or two more opinions, but how do you view burnout? How do you see business wanting to reinvent itself? And what are the considerations you are taking currently in terms of addressing the issue of employee burnout? So if you could just touch upon these two, then we'll move across the table.
Sure. So before I answer, let me quickly give a quick introduction about the organization and what we do. So all of you would know we are Act FiberNet, known in the city. So 90% of the employees are feet on street. Right? So they are like undergraduates, graduates, ITA holders and things like that. Only about 10% are supervisors and above. Now, as an organization, we are highly focused, people-focused organization, and that's the DNA of the organization. Now, everything doing to people, that's where we are. And we do anything related to people, we go out of the way to do it. So as an organization, we have numerous initiatives, benefits in terms of wellness. We have doctors, we have 3 doctors impaneled. We have a wellness manager who runs a lot of initiatives and things like that. But the important point here is even the organization having so many initiatives, how do we ensure people use these benefits? Point number 1. The point number 2 is how do we ensure the supervisors understand certain symptoms when a person goes through these difficulties, and how he enables them to getting them to use these benefits is the biggest challenge for us right now. Benefits, yes, we can have a number of benefits, online, offline, whatever it might be. That's where we are, and that's the challenge, and that's the strategy or whatever the thinking, what we do in the organization is in and around that. Hence, we did a lot of interventions to the TLs and the above, the first line supervisors and above, on these benefits and how do you ensure your team members make use of these things. Coming to the question of burnout, yes, all of us are going through, every organization is going through. In my mind and what I've seen and experienced in this organization is, burnout is purely a perception. Right? So if a person enjoys doing whatever he does, I think there is no burnout. Irrespective of amount of work or quantum of work, burnout is only a perception. So hence, whole logic or the idea here is how to make employee happy and how he perceives happiness in whatever he does is more crucial than looking at burnout, right? So burnout is for us the outcome, is more focus is the happiness, wellness is the more focus, and that's how we have been doing it, and that's how we have been running it. We have not been successful in this, but obviously the whole of initiatives and the thought process and the communication is in and around this. So that's where we are.
Sure, that's interesting, that you brought up this whole thing about burnout being a perception. Yes. So I think that's a good starting point. So if I may move to this side, Smita, would you agree with what Neetan is saying? How are you viewing, burnout as a reality in your organization, and what's the wellness outlook to burnout and from your standpoint?
Yeah, I think, even Uber is a B2C company at the end of the day. So anything that affects it in the macro environment affects the company. So it is obviously always a high stress situation. But the way Uber has gone about it is, I think it's been a journey. I think it was a lot of well-being and benefits was focused more on the physical and mental aspect of it. But what we're shifting more and more towards is looking at, you spoke about holistic, I think that's where we are moving towards. So it's not just about the physical and mental elements of the work, which is very, very important, but also elements like financial wellness, the sense of community and belonging, the social wellness elements, how well are we prepared for emergencies. He spoke about work and purpose, so I think it's about the work and purpose and the policies around that. So looking at that holistically has actually helped. Secondly, when business is creating their strategy or elements, we're asking them to keep wellness at the center as front and center, not really ad hoc events or initiatives that really happen, but make it part of the cultural journey. So we always link our well-being to some of our two critical Uber values, which is stand for safety, and the safety is not just our external customer partners, but also our internal employees. And second element is about building with heart, that's our other Uber value. And so we're tying that back to our Uber values. And the third element we're doing is actually asking our leaders to be role models and have this constant drumbeat of communication through various forums or in the way they manage their team or through employee conversations. So keeping that ongoing, incorporating it into the culture is the way that we're looking at it.
Sure, sure. So, yes,
Sorry,
please.
I just want to qualify maybe what he's saying. Maybe just
Please,
a bit,
yes,
yeah.
yes, absolutely.
So maybe I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that burnout is possibly a perception. Maybe how we look at it is, it's every individual has different framework of what burnout is for them, possibly. So burnout is real, but possibly 20 hours may not be burnout for one person, while 15 hours could be burnout for the other person, right? Possibly.
That's right.
Correct.
That's
correct.
right.
So it's not about number of hours, it's not about this, it's about what is important to that individual. And hence, again, coming back at in our organization at ABB also, our attempt, and again, like I think all of us, it's an iterative process. You can never be 100% successful. But how do you keep the employee as an individual at the center of whatever you're doing? Rather than saying, okay, this is my policy which works for everyone. Or this is my flexible work policy and this is how everybody should work. Correct? So how do I create frameworks which addresses the need of every individual? So one person may want to work for 2 days. One person may want to work for 7 days. One person may want to say that, okay, I want to take a sabbatical for 3 months. Other person may say, right now is the peak of my career and hence I want to really stretch. So how do you provide those frameworks wherein every individual can choose what works best for him or her? Obviously, the non-negotiable is delivery, so that has to be managed. So providing those frameworks, and then I think you also talked about it, about how do you then educate your managers to provide those choices to the employees in a way that, and the challenge is, if you say, okay, this one policy applies to all, it creates a problem because it doesn't work. If you say, okay, this is for you, it again creates its own challenge that, okay, this person is working like this, but why am I not given? So how does the manager communicate this thing? So that has been our struggle, and that's how we are trying to manage this whole wellness thing.
Correct. I would tend to agree with some bit of what everyone's saying here, because I think it's making perfect sense. Burnout is a very individual thing, actually. Sometimes you can be very passionate about something and still feel burnout, because it's one mind, it's one body, or it's one person. So you need not necessarily be unattached to what you're doing to feel a burnout. But it can happen in many cases that you're actually not liking what you're doing. So it's a very individual thing, because I've seen some very passionate people also burning out. So taking the points that you've made, I'd like to now move to Sonali. Sonali, in your experience now, self-care is becoming a very important part of employee wellness. So it goes into many parts for an individual. It is a lot of organizations are encouraging meditation, mindfulness. I think mindfulness is becoming a very big thing. So on and so forth, giving best practices in dietary practices, recommendations, food, and so on. So how much of this forms a part of your best practices, or have you devolved and evolved anything uniquely? Can you throw in some perspectives here?
Sure. So, I just mentioned early on that I've been with this organization for the last 1 month. So in a way, I'm in a unique position of kind of straddling right across two. I think, there are different ways of looking at it. At the heart of it is, again, referring to what everybody said, right? It cannot be a one solution that's going to fit all. Mindfulness, yes, but there are different forms of just mindfulness, right? For somebody, it's, perhaps for somebody like me, it's running. For somebody else, it's meditation. For somebody else, it's prayer, right? So the point, I think, is how are we able to provide those environments, right? And it's a very, very, like Raman said, it's not a one size fits all, right? And to that, what I have seen work very well is that you provide the basket, right? Saying this is there, this is there, this is how you go about it. And in many instances, especially post-COVID, I think employees have been looking for something to anchor onto. And in many instances, they don't know what, right? So just providing the information and kind of helping them to onboard onto something has been very, very helpful, right? That I've seen in the last 3 to 6 months or so, right? So that is one thing. The second aspect of this is, again, how are they able to manage work life stress, right? All of that, right? And it's not so much about external solutions, but really about how are they able to kind of within that environment that they're in, right? Again, to take a very present example, I've just been here a month and I see a strong sense of family, right? And that's a very unique kind of, let's say, ethos in any organization, right? So it is, in a way, the organization will support that individual in whatever they need, and pretty much to whatever extent that they need. And I've heard several examples that have happened in the last 4-5 years, and I think that the cultural ethos, which kind of passes through, let's say, leadership down to the manager and the employees, which then also extends into support for each other, that is something that's very hard to replicate, and probably I do my utmost to preserve, right? So for me, that's a very, very sort of nuanced piece, but hard to kind of sort of encourage, really.
Sure. So there would be direct causatives of stress which you have been able to identify, right? So what would you label as the direct causatives for stress?
See, a lot of it is also over the last year or so, right? It literally started in the second wave of COVID, right? While stress has been there, largely employees would attribute it to traffic and Bangalore traffic, right? Which every one of us goes through. But the last year, clearly it has been to do with loss of people that have been close to them. And just the sheer environment that we all lived through. So, and I do remember in my previous organization, right, they came back to work. We did push it, we forced it. We said it's hybrid, but we do want everybody back. And one thing that struck me was the joy on everybody's faces, right? Just that human connection, seeing somebody else, seeing their colleagues, and this sense that, look, things are normal now, right? It was fleeting, but that sense. So I felt actually a lot of people have missed that, that sense of, structure, that sense of normality that they've had in the past. And I feel that's something that I've seen, right? That's really affected people. And therefore, a lot of the things that when we look at health and wellness today is outcome of, what they've gone through, what they're feeling, and therefore, right, what's become important for them going into the future. But that's a key one.
Sure. So I'll kind of bounce this question to this side now in order to keep it. So Ramchandra, what's your take on this? So self-care now, Sonali said that, has changed dramatically given the post-COVID scenario, and it's difficult to put a one-size-fits-all very obviously. So what are the best practices you think have kind of emerged post-COVID now, and how has the dynamic changed? And one more thing to ask is, if there is a process-driven organization which has a vast thing, in terms of a wellness program, how easy or difficult is it for an employee to reach out or access wellness?
Okay. So I want to relate back to the previous point that we were discussing. The manager plays a major role here. While the individual, at the end of the day, the individual will go through the burnout or the challenges, back to office, so on and so forth. But then managers plays a major role, right? It's how they resonate to the individual, who's going through tough times, or maybe they're spending more time in the job, right? So it's very important that managers are aware of the situation. And again, to add to this, it is very important what kind of business model the organization is into, right? While some of the organizations they're okay to work from home, or they can connect from any place. But there are some organizations like us, we are a investment banking organization, where most of the processes, you're not allowed to work from home, right? So it's very important that manager is well connected with the employee and find some solution, employees don't feel that that it's not importance is not given to them. So it's very important that manager comes into play.
So you would say that down the line there should be, the culture of the organization should be tuned to wellness. Okay, so what are the, do you hit any roadblock there? Asha, if I may ask you to step in. So there is a direct correlation between, and a strong, use case, a business case for wellness vis-a-vis the way an employee kind of is productive or creative or innovative. There seems to be a direct correlation. So what are the things you can add on to this? And also if there are any challenges or roadblocks that you end up hitting on. So is it as rosy as we end up seeing it most of the times?
Not at all. I do agree that there are a lot of roadblocks. So going back to about 2 years back, right? When we this change started, where people were very well tuned to work from 10 to 6 or 6:30, right? After that, we are all free. But today, because of hybrid or maybe people are working from home, it just stretches. There's absolutely no time. I've seen on Twitter and all where people are writing that, can you guys give us a break, hell of this, and give a lunch break at least for 30 minutes. So that's the kind of stretch what we are having, especially I come from a background of high diversity also, we give a lot of importance to inclusion and diversity. So women who are probably feeding their kids or anything, all those kind of things, right? They don't have absolute no time. So these were few roadblocks which we saw where people started burning out. And I absolutely agree with one thing, that if you are passionate about work, it's not you don't burn out. But still, after being passionate also, when you're putting in for 15, 17 hours, absolutely it's a burnout, though you don't know, because you're sitting for hours together, and absolutely there is an issue of kidney, there's an issue of lot of other things when you sit for hours together, right? So I would like to point out a couple of things what we focused and did few things which actually helped employees not to a full this one, because always there is a pushback whatever you do, right? So when we started observing that this age group of 25 to 30 who are probably bachelors and not married, and they're staying single, they have this mind block of working continuously, and somewhere they're getting into depression, right? We got this White Swan, something called White Swan, which was a very strong counselor kind of a thing, and also they could talk to these people, and that's where we kind of started working on their mental capabilities and other things. And second thing is, we also started big time engaging managers, the leaders, to kind of understand, empathize, not in a full way, because as an organization we fully cannot be okay, whatever happens it's fine, the business has to suffer. We had a balance out there. Third thing, we've also brought no meeting days in weeks, wherein one day whatever happens, there is no meeting for this particular group. So we started grouping it, so that not everybody are without meetings, right? Tuesday this group doesn't have meetings. So that kind of helped a lot, so that I had my time probably to go out or pick up some groceries or be with my child, whatever it is, right? And another one thing what we brought very strongly was nudging the employees when they are working for more than 60 minutes. So there is a pop-up which comes out telling that, hey, listen, you've already sat for 60 minutes, you've done your coding of 60 minutes. Now, if you continue the same, your kidney is going to go for a toss or something like that, where people started really feeling this one pinch of it, right? And 1 hour we gave 1:30 to 2:30 the lunch break. So there were a lot of mavericks, right? You can't help some workaholics, you just can't help that. So it was going on, but at least 1:30 to 2:30, I can reject a meeting. Being a whatever, you're a man, woman, or whatever it is, right? So another one thing, the last probably thing what we brought in was, we brought in once the people started coming, that they have to attend a physical 10 minutes in the morning. like 10:30 to 10:45. They have to attend that physical dinner. It can be some fun. Cult people used to come over, like it can be yoga or it can be kickboxing. Lot of things what we brought in, and there are a lot of people who are also on the computer. This one also playing the games. So there was 15 minutes of that engagement which people started looking for. We used to have initially 10 people. Later on, it kind of now we are at 80 people. So 80 people attend this. So these are few focus group things what we did, and I can't tell I've got a full result on that, but there are a lot of new innovations what we are doing on this, wherein we're trying to focus on mental and physical and also emotional part of it, and engaging the leaders and all those things. I think with all these things, there's a slow progress, but with employees it's always slow, right?
Sure. So you have been able to establish that there is a correlation to this. There has been, yeah, because, did you happen to get a buy-in from across all the departments?
See, a lot of people, that's what, there are a lot of people who are not very interested to do this, and they find this is very noisy, right? We started having a radio inside, where internal radio, where people talk, your own people talk, and it's quite interesting. It relaxes the brains and other things. A lot of people came back that, hey, listen, Asha, this is too much of a noise, right? Can you? I kind of pushed back. I told, hey, listen, buddy, this is required for the organization, and it's not only one type of person who is here, right? There's different people, different age group. I need to cater to everybody. So I think it's going on. But yeah, there is always pushback, and
in
we're
fact,
ready for it.
So one of the things that I just wanted to collected a report that came out in Jan of 2022 from the American Physiological Association, right? And what struck me over there is the fact that the only person who can actually realize that they're going through a burnout is the individual himself or herself. It's very difficult for a manager to say that, you're going through a burnout. I mean, there are ways to figure out whether the person is losing interest in work, or the productivity of the person has gone down, so on and so forth. But what also struck me was that we have been talking a lot about the mental health part of it. This report actually said that there was an imbalance, or people did find that they were going through a burnout, impacting their cognitive or their emotional kind of angles to it, about 30-35%. But 44% of them actually said it was more physical than mental or cognitive. And going back to the point which you mentioned, that because you've blurred the lines and you continue working for long hours, you're actually burning yourself out without realizing that physically you're getting so drained. And the fact that people are working at different hours and you give them the flexibility. Now you want to give flexibility, but there's the opposite to it. When somebody else is working, you're taking a break for that matter, or maybe you worked your 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, and now somebody started working at 6 o'clock and sends out an email because of probably all the reasons that could not be avoided, like a mom taking care of the child and so on and so forth, where you now start working at 6 in the evening because there's a mail that's hit your inbox, right? So these things are there, and we're probably going to live with it. I don't think there's a silver bullet in terms of solving for it, but yeah, we need to figure out. And I think, like you mentioned, not having a meeting on a particular day, or saying, shut off between 1:30 to 2:30 for lunch. I think those things would probably be very helpful.
Correct.
I just want to add one more point.
Absolutely, please. Yeah.
Initially, probably when this pandemic hit the road, almost all the organizations felt that okay, productivity is increased. In most of the organizations, now people are working from home, they're happy, all that, right? And in the last 18 months, you see great recession, a lot of movements around. We did an analysis with the people who exited the company. So what we found was almost, we thought they're going for a salary, right? But then we found around 40 to 50% of people felt that there is a lot of push that is coming from managers, right? Just because they're working from home, they want to see them online, right? While again, as she mentioned, there is a pop-up that comes and says that okay, you have to take a 15 minutes break, a 20 minutes break. But then yes, that's the products that we are getting on board. But then in reality, that is not happening, right? We had to find a solution, and then we have to educate the managers and tell them that hey, it is not just the job, right? End of the day, you have to give the space to the employee, wherein they can take out time and then go out and come back and deliver whatever is required. So that's another output that we saw.
Correct. This work-life thing was becoming a very fuzzy thing during the pandemic. You know, people, since they're working out of home, I think that was a useful, thing of this pop-up coming out that you need to now take a break and no meetings on particular days for a particular group. And it's interesting that there was, as you said, a pushback, but a buy-in also into the idea. It's very difficult to stick to those things, right? On-the-go meetings are called, and there's no way an employee can sometimes say a no, but it's good those things, those rules are coming into place. I think that's a good part of wellness. So great, the good points. Thank you, Ramchandra. So let's move to Dr. Rahul here. So you've heard sort of, Asha and Ramchandra kind of came up with some of their points here. Would you agree that there is a pushback when you're trying to push a sort of a wellness measure? What best practices did you try and put in for self-care and wellness, and what were the challenges you thought were coming in the way of this business case or this case that you saw for pushing a wellness piece?
Well, there are many questions in that question. Let me start by saying that everybody wants to be healthy. Let's start. All of us
Correct.
want to be healthier.
Correct.
All our employees collectively who depend on the leaders of this group want to be healthy. And they have their own strategies, in their personal spaces. Some like Ayurveda, some like Unani, and some like the modern system of medicine and their favorite doctors. But all of that is reactive. What I've seen, again, my opinion, not backed by a fact, but we as a community are reactive. COVID told us that. COVID is a catalyst. Everybody is talking about, we are picking up the pieces of the wave that just hit us, right? And of course, we are currently also in a wave, but none of us are wearing a mask right now. Well, we aren't, right?
Sure,
I've got two
yes.
masks in my pocket, but I'm not wearing any.
Correct.
Because I know that maybe a week ago I had a cold and maybe that was COVID. Anyway, the point is, we are as a community very reactive. But we are speaking about making a change in an employee's life by being proactive. And that's where the dichotomy is, that's where the mismatch is. And that's the reason why we are having to innovate at every step of the way. You spoke about the pop-ups. Oh, fantastic. But if you spend 15 minutes in this room, these photographs, your brain will start to ignore. So you've embarked on a journey of putting a pop-up. You'll have to change the color of that pop-up, the angle at which it comes in, to keep it relevant for your employees. You see the same, and that's human, that's how we operate, right? It becomes a blind spot. So again, this is the prologue, and I know you asked me a very specific question of the challenges that we've seen. Challenges have been at all the levels, but to me, the biggest challenge at an organizational level is a lack of vision. If we cave in to our inherent tendency of being reactive, we will perform really well in a pandemic. But we may not learn the lessons between pandemics. The hard work needs to be done. So there was a I forgot his rank. I think it was a brigadier, a retired brigadier. My friend's father, and he said, this has stayed with me and maybe relevant to us as an industry as well, is that if you sweat more in peace, you bleed less in a war. And I was speaking to, I think, a couple of colleagues outside. All of us are reactive inherently. All organizations are reactive. And we take pride in saying how many lives we've saved. We take pride in saying how many food parcels we delivered to the employees who were isolated in the second wave, and how many the various controversial, dodgy drugs that we picked up from the market to provide to our employees because we believe that it will save life. It was an act of will. But did we look at the fact that we did nothing to reduce the comorbidities of the individuals in our organizations? We go back 10 years. As an organization, we were not able to help individuals reduce their sugar levels, their hypertensions, their cardiac risk, because that contributed to the individual either staying at home or being in an ICU. while we fixed a bed for him, we did a lot of CSR and sponsored various equipments to the hospital so that they can take care of our employees. And that's the proactive shift, and that to me is a challenge, vision, right from the top. Then comes his strategy. You need people who can envision at least 5 years hence. I'm not even talking about 10 years. You need people who can look at the potential outcome of the initiatives. I know I'm a little profound right now, and maybe try and come down and give a few examples. And for that, people need to be in an organization for that long. I recently caught up with our chief HR officer at Bosch. He's been in that organization for decades. And he's been there to see the outcome of initiatives that is rolled in various capacities. And we were talking about the industry at large, and coping with pride is the mantra. Without knowing it, all of us are coping with pride, We ask each other what initiatives you're rolling, and I said, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to change the color, but I'm going to do that. And that's fine. It's not IP, it is best practice, and it's called best practice for a reason. What we're also realizing is that people in key positions aren't sticking with an organization long enough to see their initiatives come to fruition. Somebody else is either picking up the pieces or trying to, prod that vision along. So clearly, vision leading to strategy, it doesn't need to be individual driven, it has to be system driven. And that's where, I know we're not going to solve the problem, but you ask me what issues I see. This is, for me, at the heart of the issue. It's not about this pandemic. It's about how well prepared are we for the next one. Monkeypox is knocking on our doors. I don't want to hazard a prediction here. However, there are many more that are going to come. Challenges also are, like Ramchandra, you mentioned, adoption. But if you don't have a service, what will you promote? What will you tell the managers to do if you don't have a solution in mind? So, starting from the start, and another statement that has stuck with me, hire right and fire right is what a lot of HR professionals say, right? That you hire the right candidate and you also fire at the right time, otherwise you'll be carrying dead weight. I'm being very blunt here. The same concept applies in health and wellness, where you need to have targeted approach. While we copy with pride and we do a lot, but that is transactional. It's going to fizzle out without leaving an impact. So if your vision is in place and if you strategize to aligned with that vision, you're more likely to have an outcome which will stand out. I think I was speaking to Smita during the pandemic, and I'm sure you guys helped a lot of organizations that already had a decent health and wellness platform. And I'm talking about not just the digital platform, I'm talking about the mindset. They had already done something, they had a bit of a head start, did much better. Their C-suite had less number of sleepless nights. They spent the same as everybody else did. They did not have to run helter-skelter. Whereas organizations that maybe were just embarking on that journey or hadn't yet thought of it, had a torrid time.
Sure. I think you raised a...
In fact, if I may just add to what you mentioned, right? I'm a firm believer about the whole vision part of it and, having the ability to execute. I think one important thing that we miss out on is putting measurable outcomes and tracking as to where we are as far as those outcomes. So if we don't envision where we want to get to, if we don't measure, we're not going to improve, right? And we're not going to be able to tighter and keep going back and saying, okay, we wanted to be here, where have we reached, what's not working. Otherwise, we just accept whatever outcome came out of it as the outcome that we got, right? So I think being able to measure and know where you want to get to and then say, okay, where are we on that journey? And it's a continuous journey. Maybe we're going to keep learning new things and new challenges. So, yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. In fact, this was one of the points that we were, Rupesh and I were looking at also, that I read this statistic, in the course of my looking up on the theme as well, that very interestingly, many organizations are looking at wellness, definitely, but they're not really looking at outcome-based solutions. And because of the lack of stringent outcomes attached or metrics attached to the solutions they're looking at, the idea of what could be working or not working becomes very fuzzy. So they are unable to decide whether this has worked or not worked. So it's a very interesting question, that point that you have thrown in here, Noel. So maybe I will take this back to Chandrasekhar here, our DJ here. Okay, we have bikers, DJs, and we have painters. So it's interesting. So Chandrasekhar, would you agree with the fact that technology sort of bridges this whole idea of vision being continued irrespective of who's there, the process continues without disruption? And B, what are the outcome-based metrics that you have tied to a wellness strategy?
Interesting. So let me start with Adobe as an organization. Transparency is what we believe in. Everyone can browse our policies and initiatives, which is on benefits.adobe.com. You could see all the list of insured benefits and well-being, everything available for an external view. We have also made a special page for candidates, which is called as rewards.adobe.com, which is again available for all employees. A couple of things what we did as part of pre-pandemic, I think, which is unique. Like all our colleagues had Wow Wednesdays and Fridays being no meeting day, I think so. Those things were available. Since pandemic, we have got something called as Global Wellbeing Day, which is off typically on a Friday or a Monday, which is across all the regions of Adobe. One thing in Adobe is we don't differentiate benefits or any entitlement based on the level of management, right? It fits all. We are market leaders in terms of, we've got a component called as wellness reimbursement. Wellness reimbursement is applicable for a university grad to a CXO, which is $600 which they can spend towards various things. You want to buy gardening tools, you want to pick up a bicycle, you want to pick up a Nike pair of shoes, or you want to do a Zumba or guitar classes, you name it. So $600 is covered for all employees. Couple of investments which what we've done in terms of the digital spaces. We've got an app called as Headspace, which is a short guided meditation app. As part of pandemic, what we did +1. The +1 can be anyone. It's not limited to your family, it can be your friends, it can be siblings. So that's a great investment.
They get added onto it. They get added onto it.
Yeah, they can add on. It's an add-on.
Add-on.
It's a free subscription.
Free subscription.
So one is
Okay.
Headspace. The second one is Live Dojo, which is again a global purchase, which is again +1. They can add on. So Live Dojo is something which you pick up a healthy habit. It's a 12-week program. You pick up a program, you've got a health coach assigned, and you're going to utilize it, right? So those things are something unique. Recently, what we have done is we have got a discount and perks portal, which is called as Fond. So I go to the portal. There is various discounts under entertainment. You want to do something to do with well-being. There are 2 flagship events. What we did pre-pandemic, and we're going to do it right now. The one is Benefits Fair. It's a platform which gives all our vendor partners to have a week-long event where we also create awareness to our employees. What is it that Adobe is offering which is unique to them, and to know a bit more about the policy. As an individual, I personally believe, I don't believe in optics of giving to employees, I believe in consumerism, right? Whatever we introduce, we make sure that the employee and the dependents need to utilize it, right? A lot of organizations do market leading benefits, but consumerism is something which they don't, right? So I a firm believer of consumerism. So global well-being, in-house doctor, we've got a telemedicine which is free consult for employee dependents, again no restriction, right? It's 35 specialities on telemedicine. We've got in-house doctors to do with gynae, ENT and GP. Every facility has got a health club in all our offices, so employees are welcome to do. Every organization went online in terms of Zumba and yoga, that still continues on-site and off-site. There is a lot of reiterative communications what we do throughout the year in terms of what benefits is applicable to you and your family member, right? If you ask about metrics, we don't believe in the ROI, right? My indirect ROI is what's my claim ratio of my insurance. If my claim ratio is less than 95%, that means I've got a healthy workforce. That's where I preach, right? Metrics is not. Very few organizations talk about participation, the cost of thing what you spend, but what are you trying to arrive? You need to have an index. So my index is claim ratio, right? So various initiatives. So I would always encourage people to go to benefits.adobe.com. All the policies are out there, so you could see everything.
Sure. Okay, that's an interesting point. Thank you, Chandrasekhar. So I'll deflect to Bhamini here. So Bhamini, obviously you've also been part of an industry where I think the pandemic created these two worlds. Some people were irrespective of whatever required to come to work, and some people had to stay put, and a lot of raging had to happen. What were the disconnects you experienced firsthand between the remote worker and the rest of the world? What really happened, and how did you circumvent this?
Interesting question. So, as we navigate through hybrid workplace, you can never predict the kind of challenges you get. Noel was mentioning about how some people log off at 6, some people log in at 6, right? It's like always on, right? And I think there is a guiding principle that is required for an organization. Values like I think Smita was mentioning, the culture of the organization is very important. And it is not about one team driving it. It needs to be embedded in the DNA of the organization to be empathetic, adaptable, and resilient. So, I would call it the EAR, right? It's the acronym. If you are empathetic, you can actually deal with any kind of a situation that hybrid workplace has to throw at you. It could be about the timings, it could be about ad hoc requests coming in, it could be about non-stop work, right? Some people just don't know how to manage their time. So how would you be empathetic to the kind of situations that you have never dealt with before? Start from a place of understanding, right? Just listen to the person and be there, because you cannot have, like Dr. Rahul was mentioning, you can have a vision, you can have targeted, strategies, but you are never prepared, right? And everybody knew that some pandemic was on the way. Even some 5 years ago, people were talking about a pandemic on the way. But were we prepared for COVID? We were not. And would we know all the kind of situations, the lockdown and what can come out of it? And similarly, adaptability, right? You need to adapt to thrive. You cannot, stay in a single strategy and say that year long, this is my target and this is what it is. Today, every week, the targets change. The goalposts keep shifting. There is a whole lot of ambiguity in, what you do. As a business, the macroeconomic situation, there is a war there is a pandemic, there is an economic unrest. So how do you deal with all of it? And resilience, that's the most important part. In even a physical activity, we talk about recovery, right? Stress is unavoidable. It is not possible for you to navigate through life without stress. But how do you recover from it? Right? And how do you, get back up? You fall down, and how do you get back up? That is the most important part that that you can cultivate as part of all your policies. It could be through performance feedback. While it sounds like totally tangential thing, it is very important today. You don't need to give numbers or some kind of a rating saying you are valuable or you're excellent or you're a 3 or a 4 or a 5. But people need that feedback. People need that amount of operating in that collaborative space where they are told, hey, you are doing good. Yes, validation, acceptance. It's like, how do you make sure the flow of the employee is taken care of? The flow varies between individuals. At the start of the session, Raman was mentioning this. The stress levels or the burnout for individuals are very, very different. So how do you identify it? How do you equip managers to look at intangible metrics, right?
Okay, so there is this thing about tangible and intangible.
Yes.
here. So what were the specific custom-made initiatives you think your managers leveraged well? Could you list one or two specifically?
Yeah, so this is where the interesting creativity of managers comes in, right? So in a hybrid workplace, there is no end-to-end imagination. So just like how you have Snapchat kind of this thing, right? So you have costume parties and people logging in at 4 as celebrating Halloween in a different way. Treasure hunts, virtual treasure hunts. People talking about anything and everything. Just exchanging notes on self-care, what kind of self-care methods they are adopting.
So you have specific chat rooms for.
Yeah, we do have. So we, it's about awareness of what best practices are out there, right? You have some employee satisfaction surveys. You look at the best practices that the best managers are adopting, and then you make the rest of the organization aware that like again Dr. Rahul was saying, it is not about innovation. It is about adapting to whatever works best. Give it a shot, right? Experiment with different modes of what works for your team and go with it.
Sure.
Just kind of connect the dots between what Chandrika was talking from a technology perspective.
Exactly.
You mentioned Headspace, Live Dojo, then you have your own app, which is your wellness app, I'm assuming, and then your own portal, it's the Total Rewards portal. So that's 4 pieces of tech right there.
Right there.
And then you were talking about the fact that you had to bring in people virtually. I don't know how many of you recall like April 2020. I don't know how many of us were leveraging virtual conferencing solutions back then. We were using the Avaya phones and the bridge. The audio bridge was probably the first mode of virtual. And how many of you were? I come from the IT background, so I know the transition which we had to make in 15 days to get how many of our employees into. And I think Cisco, Teams, Google Meets or Hangouts, and then Zoom just came in. They were just starting to kick
They
off.
leveraged.
And then suddenly everyone had to do whatever this room is discussing virtually over a year and a half. And why this kind of the tech intervention came to my mind is we were just doing an audit, Noel and I, about the number of touch points from a tech perspective that is required to perhaps do one annual health checkup for an employee. And all of us are, either it's part of our subscribe benefits or whatever benefit strategy that you have. When we did the audit, from the time, let's say a customer comes into our platform, the Keeping platform, to the time they complete the annual health checkup, they literally go through 20 to 25 different tech platforms. So that's how the customer journey is mapped for us. And we are, a company that services 500 corporates. There are bigger companies in India, maybe even outside India as well. But that literally shows you the dependence, even something as intangible, so to speak, from a health and wellness perspective, has from a technology point of view in terms of intervention. And the other point that I wanted to add was the question of measurement, like when we spoke. And this is an open question to everyone here on the floor. Is measurement can be, like you can say I need, and there was a point about utilization also. You can say that I want 70% of my workforce to utilize their subscribe benefits, right? That's one way of measurement. Or you can say that I want all of the, let's say, doctor consultations and all of that start peaking in terms of utilization. But how many of us here in our organizations, respective organizations, kind of talk about having health and wellness as part of A, the corporate goals, B, in any of the mission statements that we have out there, and measure backwards from there. And again, this is just exploratory chats that Noel and I have been having for a while now, right? And maybe that's a starting point, so to speak, for all companies to start thinking about it at that level, and then maybe start trickling downwards in terms of measurement. Just a thought. I don't know if it's a question, but something for us to think about.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think maybe anybody in the room who hasn't spoken. Paul, yeah, please.
As Rupesh told, I would like to agree with that. So what we did in our company is we are a force company is an outsourcing industry, and we never believed in work from home culture at all. Almost for 15 years, thanks to pandemic. Pandemic brought the change. As you rightly said, April 20th was a nightmare for us. So we formed a team of IT and HR admin. So we worked for sleepless nights, and we have to literally onboard about 300 to 400 laptops who all come into office. We need to onboard and we need to deliver. And it was a curfew, and team we had to take a special permission from the DCP level. We have to, from the top, as I think rightly Dr. Rahul told, vision. Not only about the vision stating only on the web portals or thing, but what we really act, come to the ground reality, and suddenly a change, a shift, work from office to work from home was totally a disaster for us actually. But we all, as a leadership level, went through the process, and now people are more comfortable working from home, both ways. Once and done, there are one set of people who love to come to office to work, irrespective of the pandemic situation, irrespective of the curfews. They have taken beatings from police.
Yeah,
police.
they had to take police clearances
Police clearance.
and yeah.
Some people have worn their father's BW, what you call the government dress, come with the police to the office because they would like to work from the office. One point I want to tell is about the tech. People really never thought about the counseling part. All were driving towards the client deliveries, TAT, quality. Nobody thought about the, as Nathan told about burnout situation. It's only perception maybe, but as he rightly said, person to person it varied. Many people work for 16 hours, 17 hours due to the what you call our culture, families, and so all of a sudden people are taking to take their family space into a private space, office space. So there was totally a mismatch, chaos, and children were going online classes, and fathers, mothers, the many complaints were received. From our old age parents are not able to spend time. They've been asked to go to the room, living room. They have a different space. And during all these things, there was literally a shock, a culture, and in terms of where to go and pour out. So that is where what we thought was, thanks to all our online platforms like Zoom and thing, we had started what we had in our offices. Every Friday, 1 or 2 hours is to come for here to say. Anybody can come to my room or to the HR room. They can pour out. So we started a drive callers on a Friday or any part of the day. We have a WhatsApp call, we have a special number, they can call on anytime. Whatever issues they have, personal issues, because during this work from home culture, many people got into a lot of depression. Because there's totally different change for our company size. So we had given a leverage where, that is where I think one of our wellness partners are given about Ekin Care also. I think many of our our guys from our office, they are taking free consultations. Because at one point of time, we were not even able to step out of the house. So Ekin Care and many other wellness platforms gave a lot of moral support. Due to which, people really liked the support, the kind of ecosystem what has been brought to the wellness and financial wellness. Some people lost their dear ones. So we had a special team, task force. Irrespective of whatever the condition may be in the Bangalore, we need to go to their doorstep, check what is their well-being, whether they require a finance, whether they require a grocery, whether they require any sort of health clearances. So a team worked day in and out, and rightly said, this all boils down to the passion of the company and the vision of the company, right from the leaders. It is not leaders sitting at the house and commanding. I had to go, people volunteered themselves to the office day in and out. We had to take multiple shifts. You work for 8 hours, 10 hours, okay, I'll go home and sleep and come back. There are many families who even cooked food and bought in. Apart from the CSR activity, going out to the outreach program, even for own family members who were employees' families were stuck with pandemic, stuck with COVID situations, we had to tell doctors, we had set up 3 doctors visiting their homes personally, checking because they were not able to come out, including medical tests, including COVID tests, including giving all the. So these type of services, I think, what a lot of employee engagement. And the burnout situations and the kind of stress level, the kind of depression. Right now, people love to work. You ask anybody, you ask for 14 hours, they will, nobody wears watches because the passion. You like to work. As you rightly said, once you have your vision and your mission customer centric, so everybody is tuned to the line. And thanks to all the platform played a very important role. Pandemic made a lot of changes.
as rightly said, adaptability. We are flexible. Either you ask any employees, work from home, fine. Work from office, fine. There is no restriction, or there is no what you call fallback, or there is no what you call pardon?
Pushback.
Yeah, pushback. People love to do, because that is where the leadership plays a very important role. When it drills down from the top.
Yeah, and sometimes I think in bad times you can't afford to have an unnecessary pushback also. You know, you have to move it, you have to move the, you have to push the agenda.
Push the agenda. And now well balanced.
So if I may, I think just taking off on what he said, and also what Chandrasekhar was saying about that +1, right? Through that situation, also, right, organizations went beyond what was defined, right? So you had a certain policy, you had a certain, let's say, it would only work in this situation, but it became completely flexible, right? So one of the things was, so an employee who was literally in the hospital on ventilator, right? Just we were able to give a loan within less than 24 hours when it would take weeks.
Correct.
Employees volunteering their time, right? And with that particular employee, in fact, till he went on the ventilator, somebody was in touch, right? Of course, it was an unfortunate consequence. But we were able to find jobs for family members, right? Who, that employee who passed away, for example, was the only earning member in the family. So for the brother, right? So things like that, organizations did things that was completely beyond our defined scope.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's, I think, something that's kind of changed fundamentally in how organizations look at health and wellness. It's not just about the employee anymore and the immediate family, but it kind of extends, right? It extends to beyond, what we were doing before. So that's one outcome that's
I think a lot of organizations also went cross-organizational in kind
Yes.
of support as well, because everybody was reaching out to everybody in real time.
Yes.
And technology really helped. I remember reaching out to my siblings, colleagues, who was actually in a very severe state in Hyderabad. He was battling for death, and blood, groups were being sensitized across the thing, and real-time sort of support was coming cross-organizationally. In fact,
Yes.
nobody was like bothering about who belonged to what organizations.
I
I
think
think the
CHRO
rules became a
groups-
little fuzzy.
Yeah, the CHRO groups were like, my
Yeah,
God, they were
absolutely.
so supportive, right?
Very supportive. So that was also a part of the whole thing. Thank you, Sonali, for that. Tony, coming to you. So we have had this whole thing of cross-generational workforce, and we've very clearly agreed here that one size does not fit all. So what is the kind of an agreement we need to have between generational groups in order to come to some sort of a harmonious wellness strategy? How does it differ? How do the demands differ or expectations differ?
Sure,
And
thanks.
how does tech play a role there?
Yeah, so thanks for asking that. In fact, as I was hearing everyone sharing, I realized that if you were to look at, let's say, 25 years ago, you'd talk of, you'd have conversations around, let's say, employee fun events. Yeah, then we started talking about employee engagement. And now health and wellness is actually the new employee engagement. So and when we look at schooling, for instance, the schooling that we've had in our childhood versus what children have, yeah, or parenting as a concept, yeah, and similarly organization. So there is an openness to actually discussing these topics. 25 years back, possibly this was even taboo. To even come in and say, you know what, I have stress at the workplace, I have burnout at the workplace. Well, that must be some problem of yours, because good guys, high performers never get stressed. You're getting into the corporate space, and if you're going to be in that so-called management space, you're obviously going to get stressed out. You're going to crack, you're going to get into the rat race. It's possibly because you're not strong enough and you're not good enough as an individual. Now we've reached a space where in our own organization, or in across organizations, I'm sure we're having these conversations, where we actually say, hey, it's a safe space, you can share. Yeah, and for instance, there is a colleague of mine, for instance, who's at his hometown right now. So he's been losing, let's say, 10 kgs over the last 1 month, and his parents started getting very worried. And he said, you're having, and he's a bachelor staying alone here. He's in my team. So he called me up and said, my parents are saying, just come and stay with us. I said, go and stay, do whatever it takes. When I think about it, 10 years back, you'd naturally say, go take leave at the least. You won't say, go from there, I know you'll work, it doesn't matter, right? The inclination is like you take leave, take sabbatical, take sick leave, whatever it is, but it's still a leave. Yeah. Here it's like just go do whatever it takes, and then we'll see where it comes. And there is no stigma attached to the fact that he said that, and he knows that he's not, it's not going to impact him. If you were to even think in those lines, it's taboo now in the organization. If you were to say that, hey, somebody opened up and as a result I'm going to impact his performance rating or his career is going to go, and where are we right now, right? So there's been this huge shift, and I think I'm grateful. So from when you talk about generations, so there is a generation that joined in that space where, let's say, and we were just discussing in the beginning with, actually Ram's left, we were saying that originally we thought HR is only admin and payroll. Yeah, and then now you hardly hear of organizations like that. And then the business thought HR is about organizing fund events. Yeah, to let's start talking about employee engagement to where we are right now. So the current generation that's joining us, and I'm glad, so our children who are growing up will at least join a space where there is inclusion in that sense, and they will actually listen to the fact that, and discussions 10 years now obviously will be more evolved, but you can still see that conversations moving, actions being taken, and from a generational point of view, even kids who join in, so freshers will join in, they're happy to say that 2 months down, you know what, I'm having a relationship breakdown, I've broken down with my boyfriend or girlfriend, so I need some space, just leave me alone. Yeah.
Are they very forthcoming about that?
They are.
Okay.
There are people in my own team, for instance.
Okay.
And the 7-8 years back, I think I've had this situation where somebody did a similar thing, and she went on leave for sabbatical, and you're like, how ridiculous is that? How can somebody be allowing that? Why are we tolerating this nonsense? It's just a wrong hire. Yeah. So this mindset shift has really changed. So I mean, I'd love to have been part of this generation in a different way, to come in and say that, hey, you know what, I'm having this, I'm just going to sulk today, don't bother me. Yeah. And
but you can still do that.
Yeah. You're right. Now I can do it with my own team, who are youngsters coming in and say, it's a bad mood day for me, so, just bear with me. And they're just laughing and they know it's fine. And it's not from a position of power or age or whatever it be. It's more like, just bear with him, because he bears with us when we are going through the same thing.
Sure.
So
it's a two-way traffic.
It's two-way. We are all the same at that sense. And you walk out of the door of the office, we all say we are all equals. Organizations have given us a role or some kind of seniority, or at the end of it, when you're stepping out, we're all individuals connecting at that space.
Sure.
So organizations have really changed. And when you talk about tech, I think that acceleration of pandemic and whatever it be, because of fortunately it happened in 2020 and not in 2002. And I don't know what we would have done had the pandemic hit in 2002. Maybe systems would have collapsed. Fortunately, you had Zoom emerging, and Cisco evolved or didn't evolve. I don't know. WebEx didn't came, but MS Teams came in. Now it's just accelerated all of it for us. So I think tech fortunately has been there, and we've all seen it in our lives. And I think we're just fortunate to be in this space, our children in this space. So and I relate to this concept of vision. Maybe it's ingrained in the DNA. Sometimes it's not there, but that concept of the safe space. Initially I thought it was a Bangalore thing, by the way. I should say, where the place is so much more open, and whereas maybe in Bombay it's like you have to be resilient, you have to put up with it. Everything is nonsense. And then I related, possibly it's a little more to do with the place that I am in, the organization that we are in, where it's a value of ours to say be trusting. Yeah, just trust everyone. So trust everyone in terms of whatever we just spoke about, be trusting and give them that space. So it's okay to be in a safe space.
Sure. Which reminds me that, in my earlier workplace as well, we did 2 or 3 interesting things where the IT head invited a sort of a Gallup poll within the organization. Since it was a more close-knit space, it was easier to do that Gallup poll to say, you come up with your own apps, which you think are good to kind of talk about your problems. So
Yeah.
do you have any such apps? So we did a Gallup poll of what could fit in for some sort of a counseling that can be done. And the second thing we did was to kind of put in groups of people who where one person was conversant with the local language, and we find the best Kannada app to teach the other person. So we found our own easy to learn apps, and we taught the other 2 people. We formed our own groups, and we did weekly sessions to kind of teach the non-Kannadiga the language. So those were kind of things we tried to do, and we did it through Gallup polls, and we used some bit of tech as well, and it worked. I mean, at least it brought out some sort of interest and engagement within the organization for a while, and the kind of people who took to it again was surprisingly not just the younger people, but also the older ones who had lived here for some years and were eager to do something with their time and so on. So I think it's interesting, times that we are in. So Noel, let me call you back here. You've had this rich experience, and Rupesh, you can also jump in. Pardon my poor manners, so I didn't introduce Rupesh Balakrishnan. He heads the marketing for Econ Care, and my apologies, Rupesh. So this question is to both of you. You've worked a lot with different companies, and you've kind of seen different use case scenarios and different challenges that have come your way. How has data really enabled the organizations you've seen? And this is an open question, need not necessarily be people you've worked with. How has data really changed the face of decision making for wellness, and how has it really stepped in to kind of help to mine preferences and change the wellness landscape?
Okay, interesting question actually. So one of the things that I was reading before getting here was how does leadership look at wellness, right? And do they look at it from a cost perspective? Are they looking at it from engagement? What is it that leadership looks at it? And the study basically said that leadership looks at it from a productivity and a performance point of view. Now, being a company that's digital and we are heavily into the data part of it, it actually ties us into the problems that you just mentioned. You've got a diverse workforce. Who's going to make the decision for that workforce? Is it going to be leadership, or is it going to be HR, or should the employee actually decide what they want? Simple example, a few years back from our own experience, a lot of companies said we will do a sponsored health checkup. Now a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old says, what's the use of a health checkup? Yeah, right? So now when the company is willing to spend that 3,000, 5,000 rupees, this guy says useless benefit, not engaged with the company, my company doesn't really do what I want. Fast forward to where we are today, on the platform that we have, we've got 12 benefits. 12 benefits which gives a lot of options to a very diverse workforce. And I look at the permutations and combinations that could come up with these two put together. Then the headache for leadership and maybe for the CHRO to say, lot of benefits, diverse workforce, limited budget. Right? That's where the data part comes in. Today, when we work with these 500 companies, 1.8 million lives, we have been able to see who uses what kind of benefits. Within our own organization, when we work with our clients, we segregate them into the invincibles, the middle-aged guys, the chronic users. So the invincibles are the guys who don't care about your health checkups. They're more worried about badges, leaderboards, so on and so forth, hitting the gym. The middle-aged guy wants to go for health checkups, so on and so forth. Now, when we put all of this together, the data tells us that for a fixed cost, depending upon the budget of that organization, I just need to go and say, these are the benefits they're going to get. Put it all out there in front of your employees. You can actually go and say, you know what, for 2,000 rupees, I'm giving you 25,000 rupees worth of benefits. This guy may not use a health checkup, but he'll probably hit the gym every other day. That flexibility is there. The other thing that's worked for us is we understand and we're able to go back, and this is what I was talking in terms of being able to measure and come back and tell the organization saying that if you have these benefits, this is the kind of engagement and utilization you can expect. These are the kind of improvements on the health score that you can see. How many people are going to come back, so on and so forth. And the advantage that we had is because all of these are on one application, the mind share that we got was not split between multiple applications. I don't need to know where I need to go for an ambulance. I don't need to know where I need to go for a doctor consultation. I don't need to know where I have to go for a medicine purchase. It's all in one place. A unified call to action, so on and so forth. Now, going back to your point in terms of data, because now we are gathering this whole utilization data in terms of how people are engaging at different age groups and stuff, we are bringing in the whole risk aspect of it. So we digitize reports, we get the medical aspects, we're picking up steps from the wearables, calories burnt. We are able to go back
today and use that data to tell an organization that, okay, you've spent money on this, these are the outcomes. And to give you a live example, there was an organization that had their office in Bangalore and in Gurgaon, and there was a problem where the workforce had like abnormally high cholesterol levels. But from the risk assessment that was being done, we were able to figure out that in Bangalore it was more around activity, and I don't know why people were not running in this lovely weather. In Gurgaon it was more about the food, and we actually advised them running a physical activity kind of challenges which was built around gamification in Bangalore, but in Delhi we actually did a cafeteria audit. Right? So that is the power of data, to go back and say, here's everything in one place. You're not looking at it from a unidirectional point of view saying what happened on health checkups. You're looking at how people are active, what kind of stress are they talking about. If a person is stressed, what are the comorbidities? How many of them are hypertensive, diabetic, risk for cardiovascular disease, across age, gender, location, department, all of that, obviously depending on when we've got this information. The second thing that worked for organizations with data was I could go and tell them that this is your health score. This is the average score for all the Ekincare portfolio, but when it comes to similar organizations of size and whatever, where does your organization rank? And we give a score out of 1000, and we have a current score and a goal score. We're able to actually map that across. So digital and technology actually can do a lot as far as the measuring and implementation is concerned. Another important thing, if I may take a minute, is we recently rolled out Slack and Microsoft Teams for helping HR to actually enroll people into programs. There is no longer this thing of sending an Excel sheet, these are the guys who joined this month, these are the people who quit this month. It's all through Slack. And communication, somebody mentioned about communication. How do you build that culture, create that? Now, it is difficult for a manager to keep going and telling somebody, you know what, ye sab benefits hai. Go and use these benefits. Today, the CRM is built in such a way where I know what kind of interest Noel has. He's hitting the gym a lot, or he's taking a lot of steps, or he's gone and purchased medicines, or he's not added his family members. The system automatically triggers these and pieces of communication. Communication is very important. Our stats tell us that where communication is open, there's a 3x increase in terms of engagement. And this is not your blanket carpet bombing kind of communication. It has to be very specific. So data, technology can go a long way in making things a lot more convenient for HR to actually implement and execute on these programs without actually trying to get things done manually and stuff, with the insights.
Sure. So the sort of the flavor that I get from today's conversations, to kind of put sense to it, we do realize for a fact that there is a dynamic at the workplace and there should be some sort of a vision, but vision alone does not really help. I think there are whole things that work backwards. I mean, there's a 360-degree aspect to wellness, as you said. Right from the time you're actually getting someone to monitoring his progress in the organization, not just as a professional, but how happy or what he is. And the multitude of benefits you introduce, you also understand whether the person is consuming it. You take it to the person, and this is also some sort of a marketing activity and does not remain just a tokenism that I have a whole barrage of things, a deluge of things in your, at my disposal, but who's actually using them? So there is a process, but it has to actively go top down. The culture of managers, communication, empathy, creating a connect between different types of workforce, the ones who come to work to the ones who are working remotely, and also to acknowledge the fact that burnout can vary from individuals and it can vary between generations, and creating that path to wellness can be, is not just a siloed piece, but I think it's a 360-degree piece. And we have also noticed that special circumstances help us to be flexible about the whole idea of wellness. We don't stick to a particular saying that this is what it is, but we go out of the way. I think we do the last mile reach out to people to change it. And I agree with Noel that data, I think, kind of completely, I'm sure all of us are doing it in organizations. Asha spoke about it, Chandrasekhar also spoke about it, I think even Bhamini spoke about it, and so did Smita. Different people brought up different aspects of how they are using data to kind of give in those different, repositories to employees for, you said something interesting about a 60-minute alert. And no meeting days, and I think that was a very interesting thing. And I think some of the interesting things that came off was also the flexibility, the perception towards giving flexibility to work with, which is a change in leave policy. You don't view it as a taboo leave. So some interesting points here.
I would be very strong to talk about some of these data points that we see on our platform.
Sure.
This is, when we pull this data out, and we see this on a fortnightly and a monthly basis, just to see what's happening from a trends point of view. And I want to talk about some of these things that came out recently. Right? This was data that we put out about 2 weeks ago, less than that. So based on what Dr. Noel was talking about in terms of the number of employees or lives on our platform, so that's anywhere between 1.8 to 2 million. Right? And so that's a sizable base. So when we look at the data, it's a good, fair aggregate. I was talking to Nathan just before we walked in, and we found out that of the entire base of between male and female population, and I'll break it down between male and female, just to give you a sense of how the demographics are split. So we are noticing about a 60% higher utilization of a preventive health care intervention, like your annual health checkups, is better in women than in men. And to add to that, they are actually far more susceptible to looking at vision and dental checks. These are all the sponsor of the free benefits that companies, our customers, are providing to these employees and dependents. And they are availing this more than men. Right? And the sad part is there are other trackables, right, or tangible things that we look at. For example, women are taking far fewer steps than men. So our platform records steps. It syncs with your wearable devices. It syncs with your, it's there on the phone. And that number is again 65% less than men. So, if you read a report, Deloitte pushed out a report saying that women have had it the worst with respect to the pandemic because their responsibilities at home have quadrupled, so to speak. So they are kind of pulled up, from a home environment point of view, but it's not so much of the case for them. And this was a large report across many countries. And this kind of corroborates a lot of those things. But at the same time, if you look at other negative trends, like, and I was just making note of this to just put this out there, it's negative for women from a chronic disease point of view, because some of the parameters from a chronic disease, just hypertension, blood sugar, and
cardiovascular risk. Cardiovascular risk.
Cardiovascular. So these numbers are looking in the amber to getting their amber stage for the women employees on our platform, the women lives on our platform, and this is a large number. I don't want to talk about the number here. It's a very large number of.
So it's getting to amber to red, you mean?
Yeah, it's in the orange amber stage, and it's kind of it's not the same for men. It's in the orange green stage. It's not that bad. Even in terms of the number of fitness classes that are being leveraged, men are leveraging them more than women. Right? So these are unbelievable stats, and something for us to think about when we look at analytics for all these.
Yeah, in fact, if I may just add, right, in Uber recently we launched something called a global self-ID, and this was specifically to measure elements of different forms of diversity, because we've realized that when you talk about well-being, the need for the well-being offerings for diverse employees are much more different. So we launched something called a global self-ID, where employees could go voluntarily identify themselves on various diversity caregiving elements. And now we've got data out there saying, are you a caregiver? If yes, what is your gender? Is it only for children? Are you a caregiver for elders or both. And I think that's helping us inform some of the policies that we want to create as well. So I think it's great that some of our partners like this are doing this work, but also organizations are taking a step back and saying, let's use data from scratch.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I had a question for Rupesh. So Rupesh, as what Rahul told, right? Like, we as an organization never think like, in a long run, right? Like, it's all firefighting and like, we just trying to match whatever the issues, what a pandemic is another big catalyst for it, as what he told. I wanted to understand how do you like ICACare, Practo, all these guys, what they are doing, right? Like, they kind of like, take care of the entire, if I have BP or diabetes or something. So they take care of my entire record and show me like, how I was last month or like, that kind of record. Is there something what you take care for employees in the corporates, and what is the kind of thing, data, and what is the kind of thing? I would like to know a little bit more about it.
We can talk to you in depth about how our platform is built for not just the employees. So again, I was just talking to you just before getting in. We have the app, and the scores, the health scores, right, that we track is all dynamic. For example, I have the option to self-input my details, my health details. But when I take up an annual checkup and I upload the report, my platform goes through all of the details and automatically, dynamically assesses where I am versus where my vitals are showing. And this is mine at my purview, but at an employer's purview, you get a sense of, the demographics that are in the ambers or in the greens, with specific details in your, let's say in your blood report, like specific parameters that could be showing up for employees in the age of 25 to 25, 35 to 50, and where, as an HR, you could make informed decisions in terms of the benefits that you roll out, which is what Dr. Noor was talking about. It's never a one-size-fits-all approach, because the youngsters in your organization might not necessarily look at AHC and annual checkup as a big thing, but they would value a fitness program far higher, right? For employees in the maybe the 40 to 50, I'm not patronizing anyone in terms of what is needed, but maybe in terms of they might value vision and dental checks far more than maybe the youngsters. That's how the trend is. So these are things we could absolutely talk to you about.
So Asham,
you didn't get my
one of the, okay, I'll just add, so from a data perspective, today, as you may know, there are 10,000 plus or more diagnostic centers and chains and collection centers across the country. They use very different kits for reporting. Their report itself is not standardized. The units would differ, right? The patent that we've built, we've got a global patent for the way we are able to extract information from these reports. Now, the report could either come directly from the partner, where they upload it and it gets digitized and hits our system, or the employee has the opportunity to take a picture and upload that report, and automatically the information is extracted out. This information from most of the others, they would probably pull it back just from a partner network. So if they work with a Lal Path Lab or a Metropolis or a Apollo, they would get the report from there. But they would not standardize the report. They would digitize it in the way that it came from the partner. At EconCare, like I said, we can continuously get this information. We are able to see trend lines. We are able to see how that person's health has changed over a period of time. From an organization point of view also, you will get an apples to apples comparison, which means all the units get standardized. You're no longer comparing apples and oranges for different reports. So now what Rupesh mentioned, that I could have said I'm not diabetic, but when I went for a checkup, automatically reports got digitized, blood sugar levels elevated or HbA1c levels elevated, I get tagged as a diabetic. My health score changes. So we give a score which is dynamic. It's a current score and a goal score. The recommendations, the tips and reminders that I get, if everybody in this room were of the same age and had a similar family history and are diabetic, but somebody smokes, somebody is more active, a third person is whatever, the recommendations and everything changes. It's very different. The articles that I read, the challenges that I get recommended to on gamification are very different depending upon the health risk of that person. Similarly, Rupesh mentioned about the steps.
every time I take steps, it gets logged in. If I'm sedentary for a period of time, automatically if I'm active, I get into sedentary. All of those things take place. So I hope I've answered your question.
Sure. Any other questions which you would like to?
I have a quick one.
Yes.
So really with the pandemic kind of tapering out, at least that's what we believe. But any indications you're getting around the long COVID piece, because that is hitting quite a few people, right? And that's what we're likely to see, the long COVID. Yeah. And there are so many different impacts of it, right? I mean, and what we're hearing is there are mental health impacts. Someone I know very closely has had a hearing impact, right, which is so unusual. But anything you're seeing on that, any trends, any data?
I don't think we've got any data around that. See, our data, to be very frank, is more around the people coming for a health checkup, people taking their steps, people requiring some kind of counseling sessions. We know how counseling sessions peaked. We know at an aggregate level what kind of challenges were put forward. I don't think we've got this kind of data yet in terms of people talking about long term in terms of the COVID impact. Also, the piece that is missing on our platform, I must say, is the inpatient hospitalization bit. How many people had some kind of a cardiovascular problem or a stroke or whatever else? We don't have that information. But wherever clients have shared that information with us, we are able to put those two together to say what is the predictive in terms of claims that can be addressed in the near future, or avoidable claims for that matter, but not the data that you're looking for.
So privacy plays an important role in this, right? So what amount of data can you track from your wearables? Because today from a smartphone you can even see what is the pace of my voice, what is the decibel level, how many conversations am I having. It is not only about the steps, or the decibel or my heart rate or any of it, right? So there are so many innovative apps that are available, but in India possibly the privacy related things are not that stringent. So would you have access, I mean, like you said, inpatient hospitalization and stuff like that, you don't have access to it unless they share it. Where do you draw the line? Do you see any kind of a privacy issue when you work with customers?
So good question. In fact, this comes up on two fronts. One from the employer and the other from the employee who's the user. For the employer, obviously the employer shares employee information in terms of their name, age, gender, mobile number, email address, depending on those things. From the employee, we take permission in terms of saying if you're using the app and you share this information, we will use it to do a certain amount of analytics. Typically, we are gathering, like you mentioned, steps, medical reports that people upload and stuff like that. As of now, we are not got into reading their SMSs. We don't get into reading their emails or tracking other stuff. But to answer this question in terms of how we deal with this, from a corporate point of view, we say that the medical information belongs to the individual, the employee and that person, irrespective of who is paying for it, right? So if it's my medical information, it belongs to me. It doesn't belong to the corporate. What I say is I will share summary level analytics with the corporate in terms of how many in that age and gender. If there's less than 5 employees in that particular thing, we don't even share the analytics because you could probably figure out who that person is. When it comes to data privacy, we are ISO 27001 certified. So even the medical data that is there within the organization, I don't have access to it. Kiran, who's the CEO, co-founder, doesn't have access to it. There's only one person, Srikanth, who has access. He's the CTO. Nobody else has that information. Data is encrypted at 256-bit, which is twice of what banks use as encryption. And what we also tell our clients is that if at the end of the contract you want me to purge the information, then we purge the PI information and give you a certificate that the data is purged. The employee has the choice to delete information whenever they want to. Person can come and say, I don't want to use your app, please remove my data. The data belongs to that individual, we'll purge it out.
How about push notifications when you have data, access to data? and somebody brought this point up about, I think it was Asha, pop-ups coming, right? While you are using the app, is it considered as obtrusive if you're sharing those kind of updates?
So we get both kind of feedback. Some of them appreciate the fact that there are reminders coming in terms of going for a checkup. There are challenges which push up notifications as well. We run a lot of campaigns in terms of benefits. But what we have done is, like I said, we don't do a carpet bombing in terms of the notifications. I see notifications that are very specific to my risk. Because my blood sugar levels are elevated, because I didn't walk so many steps, this is what and you can switch off the notifications anytime you want. There are companies who have different thoughts in terms of what kind of email communications need to go out, what kind of calls need to go out. There we go back with information and we say, so at the beginning of the contract itself, we talk to our clients and say, what is it that you're trying to achieve out of this program? Now, if the client says, I want a 70% of my people to go for a health checkup, I say, see, I can't guarantee 70 until I talk to your employees and tell them, are you okay with it or not? Otherwise, don't put a success metrics of 70 for me, put it low. And this is what is acceptable. And all our communications are shared in advance with the HR saying, this is the format, this is the communication, this is the information that's going to go out. And there is a frequency, so we agree on a calendar in terms of when we will push it out, what kind will go, to whom it will go, and if people want to unsubscribe, and so be it.
So,
That's
sorry.
interesting.
Yeah, and so maybe we don't have anybody from this industry, but it brings a thought. So, for instance, aviation is an industry, yeah, and let's say commercial pilots for whom, let's say, blood pressure levels and any other parameters that you're talking about are highly dependent. So how would you push, let's say, this into an industry or into a space where the workforce itself has to be healthy? Yeah, and it's almost a performance measure, right, for me as an employee, while you're tracking that there. And the bigger worry for a commercial pilot always is, if it's in my genes to be, having blood pressure at a particular age, or be diabetic at a particular age, or have cholesterol at a particular, that I know that my days are numbered. And had I known that as at the beginning of going for commercial pilot license, I'd have never done this, because I knew my life would have been limited to 45, 50, because after that I'm done and I've burnt out from what we started off. So are you saying that, for instance, you're focused only on particular segments, or you'd go there too?
So we are not into the genetic thing as yet, though it's one of the benefits that clients have asked us to get onto the platform, and we probably will have that in a couple of quarters, if not more. But frankly, today what we are doing is we are just saying, where are we today?
Yeah.
There is no career advice per se, but it's more in terms of saying, how do you improve your health, right? When I get my information from my reports, from everything else, I get a score, and I'm told what is it that's pushing my score up or pulling it down. How can I improve, and to what extent can I expect to improve?
Yeah.
That's the information that we pass on. And it's agnostic of industry. I mean, yeah, we do have certain limitations in terms of how much we are able to connect probably with a blue collar employee in terms of, because he may not necessarily be familiar with using an app or that proactive in terms of using an app. But even over there, we run campaigns where we go on site and we talk to people and start telling them that, oh, no, this is what is there, or you can have a session with a doctor. Today, for example, on the application, when the reports come in, you see it color coded, but you also have a button right there which says what next. It says either you want to talk to a doctor, or these are the recommendations that you have. So we are trying to do everything to do as much of the heavy lifting that we can using technology. Obviously, the level of acceptance and adoption will be different from segment to segment, either by age or by industry. That's bound to be there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I was remembering Chandrasekhar sharing about there's no difference in benefits irrespective of the level you are in. Yeah, and we are having conversations, for instance, you have to bring in an international change in international travel, and can we have across levels, be it somebody on the work, let's say a factory worker traveling with the CEO, both of them have to be seated in business class if you're going above 6 hours. So questions around that too. Let's say, why do we need medical checkups only for people at the factory versus why not for people coming into, let's say, another office? People are worried, hey, but we need to be worried about their blood pressure and all those levels there. Then there is anyway a performance element there, and there's that sense of fear of you're using a health app at the end of it to track me or to still figure it out. But of course, it may be good to communicate that, like you said, even you don't have access to the data.
Yeah.
There's only meta access that you have, right? Maybe the CTO has it, and that's where it is. Yeah, and so thanks, Bhamini, for bringing that point again on this data. So whether it's a worker or somebody who's more well, I mean, let's say with the bias that somebody else is more well read, yeah, but they're still aware that this is something that's worrying for me in terms of how do you use the data. If you make me load it onto my phone, yeah, will you access it for something else later? If and will I be harmed as a result?
Yeah, so that's a reassurance that we do have to give
Yeah.
the HR as well.
I think that's part of the communication.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Yeah.
part of the mindset that has to come in.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Rupesh,
So-
just a last thing before you.
Sure.
I want to know what's your view on what's trending in terms of focus group of people with disability, elder care, and caregiver. Anything what you're foreseeing? What is your plan on?
So the requests, frankly, have been coming in for the last 2.5 to 3 years, right? And we've stayed away from it until some time ago, because while we started giving those benefits or offering it on the platform, there were not many takers. So while the HR would say we want this, when we ultimately brought it on the platform, very few were taking it up. Having said that, it is changing now, right? And the demand for it has increased, I would say, since the beginning of this year, since things started opening up. A lot of companies have started looking at benefits more openly beyond just the vaccination and COVID care. They're looking at exploring creche, for example, also. And we are now working on getting those onto the platform back again.
So, are there any more questions?
I have one more.
Please,
for
yes,
Rupesh.
yes.
Just was listening to your female ratio, right, on which is downtrodden now a little bit from amber to red. So, one is I want to know what is the reason is like what you are telling, right? Like they're multitasking, there are a lot of housework, a lot of things and stuff like that. And what is that we can do for this? And I'm sure it would apply and implicate to our kind of organizations also, where they're also stretching 15-16 hours a day, right? So what is that you people are nudging to kind of better that, and what a couple of activities or steps what you're doing?
Yeah, I think so. Again, there's no one answer to curtail that aspect in terms of pushing some of those numbers into the green zone. But some of the activities that we've spoken to a lot of our customers is also coming from the fact that they want to drive a certain kind of behavior with respect to how people are leveraging their benefits in the first place. Now, I think the first thing is, if you have an organization that has put together an umbrella of pay as an employee, you can avail all of these things, and that's on you to avail it, because the employer as well as the partner can only nudge you. And we've seen organizations where it's on an average we see about 60% utilization of all of the benefits, including health checkups. But we've seen organizations where it's north of 90% also. And I think one company we've almost hit like 98 to 100%. And that comes from the fact that the employer actually cares about making sure that this push is required and all employees need to move into that zone. So that's number one, right? The second thing in terms of the request that we've seen a lot is all of the wellness related activities, whether it's yoga or whether it's sponsored benefits. Fitness benefits from gym and swimming classes and sports and everything else. So again, there's no one thing that stood out for us across many companies, but it's also a factor of multiple things that the company, the organization, as well as what we can offer in terms of wellness programs need to kind of go hand in hand. And these are some of the things that I've come across, right? The first push towards AHCs, the second push is towards all these wellness initiatives. I don't know if there's anything else that stood out for you.
No, I think the other thing that helps us drive a lot more adoption and engagement is the fact that we have these quarterly meetings with clients, and actually every client of ours has a login to a dashboard. It's a real-time dashboard where they get to see what's happening on utilization and stuff. And most of the times, I don't want to use the word fear of missing out, but companies say, okay, if you're able to achieve that over there, why not over here? And then you say, okay, these are the things that they are doing vis-a-vis what you've allowed us to work on, right? So that is the thing that data basically allows the leadership team or the HR team basically to say, where could I actually get from where I am today, and why am I over here, not over there, right? So even when we talk about data, so for example, if I'm able to go and tell the HR saying that, look at this young population of yours, look at the heat map that's coming out of the medical reports, it's abnormally high for your group, right? And you've probably done only maybe a 30% so far in terms of utilization. Maybe, we need to, this number could go up or down. We should know what it is. You're spending the money. Can we start engaging more with your employees? So it is not just a random push, but it's all with data and insights.
And that's in terms of motorcycling analogy, right? You want to turn left, you push right. So we do that push and pull a lot with our organization, our customers, because what he mentioned was when we show them that on an industry benchmark, this is where you guys are, where you need to be, that data itself is a good enough push to veer them in the right direction. But what happens after that is how invested a HR person is. And where we see higher investment of the HR person in terms of the program or the wellness initiative, that's where we see the utilization peaking. Because if they're not invested, it's never going to be.
Sure. Okay, so on that note, I mean, we have kind of heard multiple views. We've had interesting questions coming in. So, in the interest of time, we'll perhaps move the conversation, offline. And so, all of you who have questions, and I'm sure a lot of it is coming at the end of the discussion. I'll, anyways, however, leave you with some high-level questions here. What are we doing with our wellness vision? I think that's a good question that Rahul brought it. B, is it 360 degree? What are the components that we can actually bring in to make it more comprehensive and sustain it? D, post-pandemic now, what are the new things we're doing? And E, how is tech really mattering in this vision? F, how granular are we getting in mining the data in order to enhance our wellness program? And for more information, in case you want to know kind of more of it, I think we can kind of take the conversation off there. Thanking every one of you. Weekday morning, came in here well on time in Bangalore. Of course, now the dynamics is a little different in the city, but thank each one of you. And thank you, Rupesh, and thank you, Noel, for, sort of giving in your insights as well. And on that note, this is Shanteri signing off for this blueprint of a healthy and thriving worker and workplace. It doesn't end here. I think we'll be taking more thoughts back to our organizations for more discussions in future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to the